back to Huckleberry Bastion. If you're watching this video, I'm going to assume you don't know anything at all about knives and you're interested in maybe picking up a survival type knife. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to give you a bit of information that'll help guide you towards getting a knife you'll be happy with, and that'll be useful for the purposes of survival, camping, bushcraft, and that sort of thing. So I'm just going to go through a bunch of different knives that I have and tell you my thoughts on how that knife best applies towards bushcraft or survival, and some of the features on the knives that are not useful and that you want to avoid. The first thing is we're going to be talking about sheath knives, or knives like you see in front of you, and not folding knives or multi-tools or that sort of thing. Because a belt knife, in my opinion, is going to be the best type of knife for a survival knife. If you're very new to the whole survival and camping and outdoorsy kind of thing, when you hear the term survival knife, a lot of people still think way back to the 80s, and they think, Rambo. I need to get me one of those survival type Rambo knives like this. Now these knives, you should probably stay away from. I know someone's going to say, oh, well, I've got one of those and I use it all the time. It's great. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe somebody can, but in general, you want to stay away from these knives. They're more gimmick than they are a useful tool. So if you're not familiar with them, they usually have hollow handles. Now you can see I did a review for this knife. If you want more details on it, because I'm just going to briefly go over it here, you can check out that video. So they have hollow handles, which means they only have a small piece of metal, usually, keeping the blade in, which makes it weak. And you can see this one's already, there's a lot of play in there because it's moved around and now it's loosened quite a bit. But they have this hollow handle so that you can stick a survival kit in there. And that's just not really useful. What you lose in strength for a tiny kit that you could just carry in a pocket, it's not worth it at all. They'll have these big saw backs, and what you're really looking for is a knife and not a saw. You can just carry a saw. That's going to be way more effective than this. I've never seen one of these saw backs that are actually useful. This one's way oversized. I mean, some people carry large knives, but generally you want a knife that's between like 4 to about 6 inches. And also the tip's very thin. It's sharpened on this edge, and there's no useful reason to have that for like a survival knife. And it's got kind of this, I think they call it like a trailing tip, which is up swept this way. And you see that on like a lot of skinning knives and stuff. And I mean, it makes it an attractive knife if you're using it in a movie or things, but as a useful tool, definitely stay away from these kind of gimmicky knives. It's got a gimmick, that's a red flag that you should look carefully at it before purchasing it for survival. What about a dagger? Does that make a good survival knife? Well, let's look and find out. One, it's thin. A thin knife, it's not going to be super strong if you're using it to try to pry things apart. If you're trying to split wood or anything like that, any kind of hard use, you're going to risk damaging the knife. Again, the back has an edge on it. This is really going to serve no purpose. And if you're trying to baton or anything like that, it's just going to bite into the blade. So you want to avoid things with a double edge on it like that. The point is very thin and narrow because this is a blade with really a single purpose, and that purpose is stabbing. And what we're looking for, again, is a more versatile blade, a blade that can do a wide variety of things, and it's not specialized. So if the knife is specialized, that's a sign of something you kind of want to stay away from. You don't need a specialized tool. What about a hunting knife? Now, hunters carry knives, so would this knife make a good survival knife? Well, a few problems with it. One is this handle. It may fit my hand well, but it may not fit other people's hands well. It has all these sharp corners, so when you're working with it, you're gonna chafe your fingers. You're gonna get really bad hot spots, and it's not versatile in that you can't change positions on it. You have to, that's pretty much it for your hand position. It has for grind, and you're going to find this on a lot of hunting knives, it has what's called a concave grind, meaning the blade is shaped like this. It curves inward. And what that does is it allows you to get a very sharp edge. And that's great for skinning game and things like that. But it also makes that edge kind of weak because you're thinning the metal. So again, if you're doing any kind of thing like, say, you're trying to build a shelter or stuff, that's not going to be as useful. And it also has that kind of swept up tip, which is great. It gives you a lot of control when you're skinning and things, but we're going to want a tip on ours that's very durable so that if we're trying to make holes, and we're not going to have a problem with it breaking off, especially if you're trying to make a little drill hole or something in wood, then you don't have to worry about it breaking off. Whereas this, it's not going to be as strong. What about this kind of knife for a survival knife? Well, it's too small. Now this is a knife you could use as a backup knife, like a neck knife or just another one, because it's fine for small tasks like doing notches, any kind of small carving, anything like that, and you could get a lot of use out of it. But if you're, again, trying to do heavier tasks like processing wood, building a shelter and that kind of thing, then this knife will still be useful, but not as useful as a larger knife. Now it does have some good features, like it is one piece, so it's full tang, which is absolutely a feature you're going to look for. It does have the kind of a paracord gimmick, but it's a gimmick I can live with. So we go from one knife that's kind of sponsored by a TV celebrity survival guy to another one. This is one of the Camillus ones by Les Stroud. Now, would this make a good survival knife? Well, it's bigger. Not by a whole lot. Let's take a comparison of the blades here. It's just a bit longer. It has a nice handle. It's very grippy. It's almost like a dive knife. Kind of has that feel. It's a rubberized handle, but it's got a good round handle. You can get a good purchase on it here. I believe that it's full tang. I haven't looked at the stats for a while, but it has this flat butt, the pommel in the back that you can use to hammer things. So that's a good feature. It's got a lanyard hole. That's another feature you might want to look for. I don't have a lanyard in it yet, but it's a good feature. It prevents you put your lanyard on, put it around your wrist. If you're using it, you're not going to drop it into the bush and lose it. So lanyard hole, full tang, a nice solid flat pommel. So those are all good features. It is a bit gimmicky here, in that it has a little carved out spot, and that is to run this fire steel, which I've never done. I don't carry this knife very often, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. But you can you get a little area there to pull your fire steel, and it may take some tries if you've never done it before, because again, this has that coating on it to protect it from corrosion. My biggest beef with this knife is how the spine thins out. It starts thinning right here. It thins out to a very thin point, which again, you're going to lose a lot of strength. You're going to risk breaking that point. So some of the features we're looking for, but not perfect, but in the ballpark. The reason I don't carry this knife very often, and this is something you're going to want to consider when picking up your first knife, is the sheath. This is the junkiest garbage sheath ever. It's super ugly. It's uncomfortable and just completely unappealing. And I know some of that is just, personal taste, and I learned this a long time ago from some other videos. some of my favorite videos to watch. If you don't like the sheath, you're not going to wear it, and it's absolutely 100% true. What about a Mora as your primary survival knife? I wouldn't suggest it, mainly due to the size of these Moras. Now, understand that Mora is a brand of knife, and they make all kinds of different knives of different sizes and things, but normally you'll run into people talking about the Campanion style ones because bushcrafters really like those, and I understand why. There's a lot of good features. I have several of them, and it's definitely a knife I use and carry a lot as kind of a backup, because it could do most things, except because of its size, you can't do the heavy work with it. So let's take a look at it and see what it has. One, it has the thickness that we like. It has almost a drop point. It drops in a little bit, but is basically flat. It's got a nice point, nice sharp point, but still thick enough and strong enough for doing what we need. It's got a sharp spine. This one's a little bit rounded off, but I think you can still use it to pull a fire steel on. They have what's called a Scandi grind, which is like a flat grind like this. It starts at this bevel and goes right to the cutting edge, and that makes it super easy to sharpen in the field compared to some other grinds like your concave and convex grinds. It doesn't have a full tang. I think it's like 3/4. It comes to about there. So you're giving up a bit of strength there. It's not full tang like we like, but it is still very strong. And for the money, just grab one. They're super lightweight, and have that as your backup tool, right? This one is specialized. So since we're going for a more generalized purpose tool, tend to stay away from things that are specialized. Now, this is specialized for, I use it when I'm going kayaking and things. Generally, for a survival knife, I avoid serrations. The serrations are great for cutting things like nylon rope and stuff like that. You can really rip through them, and that's what a lot of the fishermen carry. Because if they get tangled up or anything, or they got to get through some tough rope real quick, those serrations make quick work of it. It's got a safety point. Now, we need a tool that makes holes, so that safety point is not going to be good for that. But it is good if you're out and you don't want to punch a hole in your oil gear. It does have a nice sharp spine, just like the other Mora. So it does have some of the features, but not something you're going to carry in the woods. The knife I carry on me most often is actually this one. I wouldn't consider it a primary survival knife. It's just a backup like the Moras. This one's made by some local guys here in Nova Scotia. It's called Triple X Knives, if you want to check them out. I'm not even sure if they're still around. I purchased this maybe 6 years ago. Now, I really like it. It has Scandi grind, so super easy to sharpen. It's a nice thick flat spine and a nice pointy but strong tip. Now, the only thing that is not the best about it is, even though it's full tang, which we like, it's got a kind of a pointed, stylized pommel, so you're not going to be able to use that for anything. And the handle is just kind of a strange shape. I think it'd be better if it was more rounded out this way. I mean, it's comfortable for me, and I've used it a lot, but in other hands, it's probably going to be problematic. Probably going to get a lot of hot spots on it, but I don't mind it at all. And it's just got a lot of sentimental value, so I carry it a lot, and it's not bad, but I wouldn't consider it a primary survival knife. Now, a knife that's about the same size, this is the F1. Now, this is an expensive knife compared to the Mora. It has a lot of great features, but I consider it a bit undersized like the past 4 knives that we've looked at. Again, thick, strong, full tang, lanyard hole, really comfortable grip. It's a rubberized material, so it gets wet. It's not going to slip around on you. It has a convex edge, so shaped like this, which can be, it's not as easy to sharpen those in the field as it is with the flat grinds or the Scandi grinds. So there's that one thing. But it's very good at, if you think like an axe, it kind of pushes the material away. It's kind of made of, I'm not sure what the steel is called, VG10, I think. Yeah, I think it says that right on there. And it's like a laminated super steel or whatever they call it. I haven't had any problems with it rusting or anything on me, and it served me really well. But it is an expensive knife compared to the Moras. So the Mora's the cheaper option. If you lose this, you're going to be out a bit of money. But this is an excellent knife, even though I still consider it a backup knife. What knife do I carry then? Well, I carry an SE5. Now, this is usually on my pack and not on my side. Now, most people are going to say you should be carrying your primary survival knife on your side. That way, if you get separated from your pack, you're still going to have your knife with you. And I mean, that's an excellent philosophy. But I usually carry my smaller backup knife on my side because of the weight, which is my biggest issue with this knife. Is it weighs a pound. Now, what you're going to look for is something a bit lighter than that, because that is quite a hefty piece of steel to have on your side all the time. It does, however, give you tremendous amount of strength and durability. You're not going to have to worry about hurting this knife. You can use it for building shelter and do whatever you want with it. It's not going to fail you. It's got a very strong tip. It has a flat grind. It has kind of the saber grind, and then your secondary bevel. It's flat grind, so it's not too tough to sharpen. It's made out of 1095 steel, and you're going to find people are talking about steels. There's all kinds of different steels. Don't worry too much about it. You can always look the type of steel of your knife up before getting it, see what people have to say about it. But generally, you're going to go for a carbon steel blade over something like a stainless. Now, stainless does have the ability to prevent rusting, so it is more corrosion resistant than the carbon steel. And that's why you're going to see on carbon steel blades this kind of coating they put on it to protect it from rusting. Some people will say get one without the coating, but I don't think it really matters. It's going to wear off anyway if you're using it, and you can always file some of it off if you want an area to pull your fire steel on. So yeah, the only other thing I would say about this particular one is the pommel butt here is specialized, and I'd prefer that it were like a very similar knife, the BK2, and that it were flat. So then you have another useful tool, whereas this is a specialized tool, and this is specialized for breaking windows. So if you have to escape from like a car, or I think these were made for like either bush pilots or helicopter pilots, if they had to get out of the vehicle, they had this nice little sharp point here that they could use to bust a window. But you want something more generalized and more useful, just something flat like this. Now that I've looked at some of the other knives, we're just going to review the features that I think are what you should look for when you're picking out a knife for survival. Now remember, you want to stick with things that are durable and versatile, because that's what we want. We want a tool that'll do a lot of different tasks and do them well, but isn't really specialized in any one thing. So we want a blade. It's about 4 to 6 inches in length, this one being 5. Preferably a flat grind or a Scandi grind. Maybe even your convex grind is okay, but just remember those ones are a bit tougher to sharpen in the field. You want a nice round, comfortable handle to fit your hand, and you're not going to get any hot spots when you're using it, and just kind of like hot spots where you usually get blistering and things. So it's going to be very comfortable to use in different positions. You want one that it's a full tang, so one big piece of metal from the front right to the end, and that's going to give you strength. The handles break off, you can still use the knife. You want one with a nice flat spine that has a bit of thickness to it. This one is 1/4 of an inch thick, but you really don't need it that thick. A bit thinner than that, then you're going to save on weight, because these ones are rather heavy, and preferably I want something with a bit less weight than this, but still a bit of weight, so that when you're doing chopping and things, you have that advantage. So a flat spine, no kind of saw back or anything on there, 90 degrees, and that's what you're going to want to look for. This gimping or gimping, or I don't know what they call it, they just put little ridges on there so that you can get some purchase. You have something to put your thumb against if you're doing up close work. If it does have that, give it a feel, see if it actually works for you. This one's a bit slick, so I don't find it that effective. And also, you're going to look at the point. I want one that's either flat across, and the point's up here, or a drop point that goes down. You want to avoid things like you see on the skinning knives where the point is swept upwards. And you want to avoid very thin points, because you want to be able to put this in, make holes, not have to worry about it breaking off. Back here on the butt, preferably an exposed pommel that is flat. That way you can use it for hammering and other tasks. Would be the thing to look for. And of course, always go with the lanyard hole, because they're useful. Put your lanyard in there around your wrist. If you're swinging, especially if you're swinging like this and it flies out of your hand, you're not going to lose it in the bush. And just a little bit of extra safety there. Well, if you've made it all the way to the end here, I know this was a bit of a long video, but I haven't done a video in a while, so I wanted to add some more content to the channel just to keep things alive. I did it mainly because a friend was asking some questions about what's a good survival knife. So hopefully, by watching this video, I've given some people who don't have a lot of knowledge a bit of good information to use. I may have gotten some things wrong. That's okay. If you have any questions or comments, anything constructive, just put it down in the comments section, and there's a good chance I'll get back to you, and we'll go from there. So again, thanks everybody for watching. All the people that have been watching my videos for the last few years that I've had them up and have stuck around, I really appreciate it, and I hope you've enjoyed a few of them. See you next time.